Hello, Romans here and welcome to another music review. I review every album from a viewpoint of a musician, as I'm a singer, songwriter and a bass player for my own group Jakubej, and more than 2 years ago we released our debut album called Pursuits in Life. What makes it unique is that it's a heavy prog rock without guitars. Instead you have drums, bass, saxophone and keyboards. You can check out all of our music videos on my YouTube channel. And in the description of all these videos you will find all the information about where is the record available. It's available on all digital platforms like Spotify, Tidal, Deezer, iTunes, Amazon, Bandcamp, but also in this digipack version of a CD with a very beautifully illustrated 20 pages long booklet. So in case you want one, all you need to do is contact me by email, on Facebook, on Instagram, or you can get one through Bandcamp as well. And today I'm going to review the debut solo album from Mariusz Duda, Lockdown Spaces.
Music review. Music review.
If you're watching this review, chances are you know who Mariusz Duda is. If not, he's a pretty known musician from Poland. He is best known for being the frontman, the singer, the bass player and the lead songwriter in one of my all-time favorite bands and one of the best bands in the genre, Riverside. And as you can see, I have their t-shirt. I even met him on one of their gigs in like early 2011 when I was like 20 years old. They're a huge inspiration for me, and I also made a review for their latest album, Wasteland. He also has another project called Lunatic Soul, which is slightly more in that ambient electronic territory, but to a high degree. It's still very much dependent on live instruments. Coffee. There was still one more project, the name of which was Meller, Golizniak and Duda, which was from a few samples or few songs I've heard on YouTube, kind of like 70s hard rock, but I haven't listened to that album, so if you're familiar with that, let me know. And earlier this year, I think it was earlier this year, Duda announced that he will be releasing music even under his own name, and thus creating like the third phase of his music or third side of his music. And he dropped a song earlier this year, which was kind of in that very acoustic indie pop territory. He was playing on like ukulele. It reminded me a little bit of Steven Wilson. And actually when I was going into this record, I thought that he was gonna do something like this, that almost uplifting indie pop. In terms of vibe and mood, maybe reminiscent a little bit of the Love, Fear and the Time Machine album from Riverside. But this album is actually very, very different. So before we actually start with the review, I just want to give you a very brief background of this record. It's called Lockdown Spaces, so you kind of can guess what it means. He basically wrote and recorded this album while being in the quarantine, or while being in the lockdown, as all of us have been in the past, 4 or 5 months. And this music is to kind of represent and channel those feelings. At the same time, it's purely electronic music, something that Riverside have hinted on in their music. They even have the Eye of Soundscape album, which contains all of their sort of a Tangerine Dream influenced electronic instrumentals. But this album is strictly instrumental. There are no live instruments, at least based on what I've read. I've heard it 8 times as of now, so let's dive right into the review. The first track on the album is called Isolated, which is a pretty fitting name for an opener. And first we hear this synth melody that reminds me a lot of Taiko, even though Taiko is more of a guitar-oriented ambient electronic music, but it's very similar in that vibe. Then we hear an arpeggiator, which kind of brings to mind Tangerine Dream, which is also a huge influence to Duda. And then we hear some synth bass and also some electronic percussions, even some backing vocals. The song is building up until it goes back to its original melody, and it also reminds me a lot of the soundtrack for the computer game Mass Effect, especially for the first one, and I really love that soundtrack. The second and the title track, Lockdown Spaces, has that almost like a lo-fi piano with a very audible ring to it, and to a certain degree it reminds me of the track Rainbow Box from Riverside's Rapid Eye Movement record. It creates tension of being in lockdown, and we hear Mariusz repeating over and over again the title of the track, also breathing as if he had an anxiety. This is more of a punchy song because it's made of shorter, more percussive electronic sounds.
I'm in lockdown. I'm in lockdown spaces. I'm in lockdown. I'm in lockdown spaces.
In the track breaks, there are many different melodies going on, made of sounds that seem to be of a lower sample rate, giving it an old computer game kind of a vibe. In the second half, we hear some synths in a role of like orchestration. And after a short break, it gets a bit more groovy with a very fat synth bass, and again that taiko-like melody and Riverside-like backing vocals. Waiting is mostly made of samples. Thought Invaders brings Mass Effect to mind again, and we hear this simple synth drone on repeat and some background soundscapes. It's really beautiful. Pixel Heart again has that taiko-like melody, there's a fat synth bass, and also there's this kind of like sci-fi synth that comes out of nowhere, and it seems to be in a different rhythm, almost as if it's a different song, and it actually works, I really like it, but the first couple of times is very subtle, and I think after the third time it takes over the track and becomes the dominant part. And it again brings Mass Effect to mind, and I know that I'm a bit limited with these comparisons, but that's mainly because I haven't really listened to so much electronic music, so there are only a few things I can compare it to. Silent Hall is a short atmospheric piece. Unboxing Hope has a darker mood with strong percussive sounds, and we even hear those breaths typical for Riverside. The final track is called Screensaver, which is under a minute long. This is like an ambient short closing piece that kind of leaves you a bit depressed after the whole experience. Even though the album isn't very long, it's around up to 35 minutes, but the closing track is probably the hardest to bear. I really enjoyed this album, and as someone who's been diving into like modular syntheses and synthesizers and all that stuff, basically everything I've learned I can kind of hear on this album, which is kind of great. And even if you watch my videos, you know that if I didn't genuinely enjoy an album, I wouldn't make a review for it. Mariusz Duda is one of the biggest heroes for me, one of the biggest inspirations for me, and he just keeps delivering. I really think he's one of the best artists out there, and I hope he will keep exploring in this third phase that he showed us. Have you heard his album already? You can let me know in the comment section below whether you agreed or disagreed with me. If you are a Mariusz Duda fan, you can let me know how well do you think it compares to his Lunatic Soul project or to Riverside, maybe which records from these projects are your favorite ones. Also, if you like my videos and if you like the stuff I'm producing, the best way how you can support me is by buying my record, because I include audio samples in my reviews and thus making them the most informative and entertaining to watch. I usually run a risk of getting a copyright claim, and at that point I will never ever be able to earn any money from these videos. So basically the only way how you can support me is by buying my debut album. At this point there's only one available, but there are more to come. You can follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. You can find links to both in the description of this video below. Also, if you like this review, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. You can check out my own original music, and if you like Riverside, I think you're gonna like it as well. My live performances, my worst to best series, and quite a lot of other reviews as well. Thanks a lot for watching.